Welcome to another episode of Discovering Disruptions in Tech. As always, I'm your host, Howard Holton. And this week, I have an exciting guest. We're going to talk a bit about kind of path, evolution, growth, and the choices that were offered and what happens when we take them. So join me in welcoming Scott. Scott, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
So introduce yourself.
All right. So my name is Scott Hogrefe. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for a company called Netskope, and I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
So you are currently the CMO.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it like going to college and getting a marketing degree and having the lobotomy?
Right. Exactly. Very good. You've been waiting to say that.
I have. So I didn't want to spoil it before we were on camera.
That was great. I actually didn't. I went when I was in school. I got a social sciences degree, a business minor. Marketing was the furthest thing from my mind and the path. And I initially explored a bit around. I actually thought about politics for a moment, and then I shook my head.
Woke up from a bad dream.
Yeah, exactly. And I. At that time, things in tech were heating up, and .com was kind of becoming this thing on the horizon. And I thought, okay,
the late '90s, right?
Yeah,
97,
exactly.
98
Exactly.
Kind of
This is what I need to do, and so I got into IT. I was working for a company called Alza Pharmaceuticals, which was later purchased by Johnson & Johnson.
Okay.
So. Alza.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal at the time.
Sure, I just meant J&J.
Oh yeah, right.
Never heard.
I thought you meant Alza. Yeah. No, so they were a research, R&D, and doing drug development, drug delivery technology. Is really fascinating stuff. They would transdermal, like a patch that you might, like a nicotine patch, or or introducing pain relief.
Yeah. My dad got some of those very early on.
Yeah.
And it was one of the oxy kind of level patches, really serious pain meds.
Yes.
And he didn't read the instructions because my dad was a corpsman in the military. Thought that was the same as a doctorate.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like day 3 of the new meds, and he cannot get out of bed. He's just full noodled.
Oh yeah.
And we're starting to freak out a little bit. And again, he thought he had his doctorate because he was a corpsman. So he refused to let anybody do anything to help him. Don't you? We live 3 hours from a hospital. Don't you dare call the ambulance. We don't have the $3,000 kind of thing.
Still.
And and it was a bit stressful.
Yeah.
Right. And so he recovers weirdly. Everything starts working again, and then he goes, maybe I should read the instructions, and finds out that the transdermal at the time you could not apply to the same place. It lowered the resistance of the cell wall so much that if the patch didn't get the resistance of the cell wall, it just dumped all the medication at once.
Yeah.
There's no longer time.
You're getting the full dose.
Correct. Yeah. Immediately. And so, give yourself a full dose of pharmaceutical heroin, you don't get up.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Your body just goes, hey, we're on vacation right now.
Call me back later.
It's hilarious. I mean, it wasn't at the moment, but when we found out what the problem was, it was hilarious because, again, right?
Yeah.
Kind of hoisted by your own petard.
Exactly. So that was... I was in IT, and I was working with these research scientists, and one of the things we were trying to figure out was, well, what can you use in the lab, right? What kind of tech can you use in the lab to do an electronic lab notebook? Okay, so I would actually get suited up and go into the lab, and it was quickly that I realized, well, there's not a lot that you're going to do in here that doesn't involve hermetically sealed keyboards and all. You're not going to use a stylus with these gloves on. That's not going to work.
And the technology sucked at the time.
It totally did.
Right?
Yeah. You weren't. I mean, it was going to be a long road. But it really helped me connect with just the human element of tech, and I credit those early days with what I see today and how I see even not just the end user, but how technologists and IT professionals or security professionals have to interact with the tools that we provide, and what sort of help are we actually, what kind of service are we giving them to ensure that they are effective at doing their job,
right?
And so I've carried that with me, but it was a really good way, I think, to also recognize I didn't want to do IT forever. I really had an affinity with the more creative side of, from a marketing standpoint.
But did you know it was like marketing at the time?
I didn't really. I really mostly
basically
to
were
brand.
Like but it's also because I went through kind of the same thing, right? I've worked in a bunch of different industries, and people ask like, how did you get to that point? And I went, well, when I changed to my third industry, what I realized was the technology was the boring part. How people use technology to accomplish things was the really interesting part.
Yes.
And taking the lessons from what someone else did that the new company didn't even think about looking at, and going, hey, you could do it this way, was super interesting, right? The application of technology is more interesting than the technology itself. So it sounds like a similar realization. But it didn't lead me straight to marketing. Right. It didn't lead me straight to kind of brand and the psychology and the value of it. And instead it kind of led me to being the face of the IT, right? Like it's a journey, not a series of light switches.
Absolutely what happened for me. I realized that I was decently good at storytelling and at building a business case for the projects that I was engaged in. And I got really into that side of it.
Right.
And
you didn't become a project manager, did you?
I was a project manager.
Ooh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, man.
So sorry. That's just
you got to have them.
I mean, sure. It's just soul sucking.
It was.
I was a project manager as well. Like I'm not. I went through that.
Can relate.
I ran away really quickly though.
Yeah. So that was the early days and how I got into marketing and how I still have like this affinity for what is it like to use the tech, and so then can I relate that from a messaging standpoint? Can the value prop be based on either simplicity or the challenges or that you're solving? So
I mean, it's interesting. So I wander show floors constantly. And I was a really hard customer, and so when they first started using the NFC tags, they give you a little card, and the card would go behind your badge.
Yes.
And so I figured out really quickly if I put that card in my back pocket, you couldn't scan my badge anymore.
Right.
And so I loved walking around booths and just going, nope, and walk on. And they go, wait, where are you going? Well, I don't know what you do. Your booth said the same thing as those 7 booths. And none of those words actually mean anything. Yeah. So I don't know what you do. Well, do you want to know? Yeah, that's why I stopped. But I'm not going to stay because if you can't tell me on your booth you've paid $100,000 to build, then I actually don't care. Right. Like that doesn't show me that you're going to represent me well as a customer.
Did you get a chance to go on the show floor?
Yeah.
So what's interesting to me is I saw Wiz.
Yep.
And I think it was Pantera.
Yep.
So with these immersive experiences, which is about, I think there's a thing in Vegas called Meow Wolf, which is similar, right? It's this notion.
Don't call Meow Wolf similar. Meow Wolf knows how to do that right. They actually understand the value of an immersive experience.
I think they borrowed a page from Meow Wolf.
For sure,
right?
For sure. But I think they did it without understanding what Meow Wolf's purpose was.
Maybe,
as well, right?
Maybe. I don't know.
Too many of these tech companies, they borrow something because it's neat without understanding what made it neat to begin with.
Interesting that they're inviting you in to engage.
Sure.
Versus it's going to be a sea of sameness in terms of.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that.
Right.
The best one I saw was actually not theirs. The best one I saw was a company I've never heard of. Couldn't tell you the name of the company, which isn't important because I actually took one piece of non-sticker swag, and it's a T-shirt, which I never do, but it's from this company. And what they did was they paid a local company to set up the booth as a record store. Oh. And they went, no one knows what we do. We don't really fit in a category. We're brand new. Yeah. We're just going to have a record store set up. And what they got was everybody stopped and went, are you selling records or something? And they're like, no, but But
let's talk. Yeah.
Let's chat. And we chatted, and it sounded really interesting. And I got a cool, like, all their T-shirts are based off of like 1980s band T-shirts with their kind of logo mixed in, and just a really smart way to get you to stop. The goal of the booth is not to make a sale. The goal of the booth should be to get you to stop and ask questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
For sure. Well, so where was I? I was talking about
kind of the evolution and starting to move into marketing and
so
really that project management kind of understanding of how companies use tech.
Yeah, and then I got into some of the digital side of things, and then moved over into a company called Brocade, which you may have heard of. Brocade
sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
They make like laundry detergent, right?
exactly. Blue and green.
Right.
No, it's Brocade was their hallmark was fiber channel.
Yeah. Sand switching from forever ago.
Exactly.
And they were kind of the first big, super reliable, super performant sand switches.
You got it.
Right?
You got it. And
I loved their network switches, by the way. I might be the only one, but I really
like
their Ethernet stuff.
This was the other sort of aha for me was Brocade ended up buying a company called Foundry Networks.
Yeah.
And Foundry had a huge following. Everybody loved that brand, and there was this cultish following. And what the notion was we're really good at fiber channel and storage, switching or networking for storage. We could also do this, right, for Ethernet or networks, communications. And the realization is that these two buyers believe completely different things.
Correct.
Right? And that...
Well, they fundamentally believe that those two networks, are so incredibly different from each other, they shouldn't share any words in common.
Right.
Right? Like, don't you dare call this a network. This is a network.
Yes.
And you're like, well, actually.
Yes. I believe in lossless.
Right.
Right. And I'm okay if I drop a packet.
Right. Well, I believe that lossless is the requirement.
Yes.
I believe that lossless is impossible.
Right.
Right. So how do I maintain a data stream and, one type of data versus an infinite number of types of data?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And best effort on the...
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So very simple versus very, very complex as well. Right.
Yeah.
Like fiber channel networks only work when they're kept simple.
Mm-hmm.
You can't keep an enterprise network simple.
No.
Which is why all these things come up. Right?
Yeah. So you have this, these two sets of buyers, and so you get this human element, right? Which is similar to what we see now when you talk about convergence, right? Born out of the massive move towards what we call hybrid work. Right?
Sure.
And the need to you've got these different interests that have to come together, and potentially you're looking at can we actually, is it a trade-off between security, let's say, and networking, right?
Sure.
Or can you optimize for both, right? And so that is I'm fascinated by the human aspect with respect to what is your motivation. What's your primary requirement? And then how do you, as a company who's, potentially disrupting that, or coming into a space where you're asking those two things to come together?
Sure.
How do you navigate it through the personal aspect of that? It's fascinating to me. I love that.
I tend to agree, right?
Yeah.
I really like that kind of, if we need to stop looking at organizations the way we do, because they're not a thing, they're an organism.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You take the people away, you no longer have a company of any kind.
Right.
Right? You have an empty shell of buildings. And so the organism is the 10, 100,000, 100,000, now million people that make up that company and how it functions, and you can't ignore any given part, right? Yeah. It's easily as complex as, well, I would say the human body, but the human body is so infinitely complex, it's ridiculous. But it's not a bad analog.
Right.
And if you fail to kind of understand the pieces, you're not going to be able to treat the body.
Right.
What's interesting is IT is nothing more than the medical services for the body, the organism, for the company. And yet, the number of people in IT that steadfastly refuse to understand the totality of that organism is hilarious, right?
Yeah, indeed.
The number of organizations that I've worked at or consulted with where I go, how does your company make money? And they go, why do I care? That's the purpose. That is, in fact, the point. It's like,
right.
How are you missing this?
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. So that part is also stayed with you. So this, relating to people who, in the dynamic of, let's say, the category would be SASE, right?
Sure.
And where are we in SASE? Say we're pretty early in this journey on SASE.
Sure.
And what is what are going to be the things that keep us from getting there? And invariably, I think it comes back to some of these human dynamics and ability for people to there's power involved, there's budgets, there's all sorts of dynamics at play that we have to navigate and through this, technology lens.
I mean, the technology itself isn't settled and simple either.
No.
Right?
No.
We've kind of beat around the bush on standardization and adoption and
what it really means.
Concurrency, right?
Yeah.
Being current with our systems, that all makes that easier.
Yeah.
Right? We've built networks of exceptions. Right?
Yeah.
They're not homogeneous in any way.
Right.
They're just networks of exceptions. Forget about the like what you get in M&A, right? Just the exceptions that you make within your organization that should never be allowed.
Right.
And when you add all those up, that's actually the network. That's actually the system. That's actually the kind of tech stack is just this series of exceptions.
Yes.
Right. My group doesn't want to use AWS. We're going to Azure or vice versa. The CEO's EA refuses to do MFA.
Yeah.
Cool. So an incredibly powerful person has an easy backdoor into the company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is it reminds me of some of the early days at Netskope when you recognize that, and having been in IT myself, you recognize this. You're Dr. No. Often.
Yeah.
Right. And sorry. A funny aside. My wife was really into Orange Is the New Black around the time.
Okay, I remember that show.
Yeah. This was
05, 06, sometime there, or 08
exactly,
maybe.
10 years ago, right? And
almost 20.
It's a long time ago. Yeah, time does fly. But she was really into this show, and we were debating on how do we think about this enabling of the workforce in a new cloud era where everybody wants to use SaaS applications and I was driving to the office one day and I was thinking about this idea of you block or allow things, and she had just been talking to me about the latest episode of Orange Is the New Black, and I thought of allow is the new block. And that was the unlock for a tagline for the company, but also a way of kind of thinking about it is how do you start to change the perception or how IT and security think about enabling,
right?
Which then ends up informing a whole lot of things about the technology you're going to use and leverage to get control or assert governance over.
Sure, to accomplish whatever the goal is
Absolutely.
at the particular moment.
Absolutely.
Right? Goals, because there's never one goal either.
Right.
The goal is to make money.
Right.
But money has to be sustainable, it has to follow the rules, it has to be governed, it has to be responsible, ideally.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, indeed. So that it's kind of like been deeply woven into how we've even thought about the types of controls that we put in place and how that's built out. And some of the early DNA of the company. It's pretty neat when you get right down to it.
For sure. So, people that are in IT, there's a lot of burnout in IT, right, that are looking for a change, how would you sell them on marketing?
Oh gosh.
First off, would you sell them on marketing? Or are you like, I wish I could rewind 20 years and go back and stay in IT?
No, I mean, I think that if you're in IT and you're someone who, first of all, having a background in IT myself, and then moving into an industry where that is the buying center was very helpful. I felt like I could relate, and maybe that's the key to great marketing, and maybe it might be the key to any job.
Sure.
If you can relate to your buyer or the person who's going to be consuming whatever it is that you're involved in. Can I relate to my end users? If you can relate to your end users, you can probably relate to then people in your role who need to, go through. So you don't want to be Dr. No, right?
For sure.
example.
Nobody likes that. Nobody should like that.
Right. You don't want to be painted with
it's
that
exhausting.
brush. So knowing that myself, as having been somebody who was telling a person you can't have that server under your desk, sorry, right? Made it easy for me to come up with a very relatable tagline that people could identify with. So I think that it's not a terribly big switch. You can do it. You just find out if you're passionate about that alone. Storytelling, relating, being able to connect people to what it is why they're interested in something.
Sure.
I think that's a.
And what would you say to marketing organizations that have no customer employees? You know what I mean? Like they hire marketing people from marketing schools that did marketing things, and they really don't have that customer perspective within their stack.
Go out and immerse yourself. Go and engage with your buyers. Whether don't do focus groups. So it's a great way to
Focus groups are terrible.
Test a message maybe, but go and live it. Like hop in the lab, put on a lab coat, and see what that person's going through that you're selling to.
Yeah, do a ride along, but do a real ride along. Don't do like I'm gonna go tag along with a salesperson as they do the wrong thing too.
No,
right?
Go live it.
Yeah,
for even if it's just for a day.
Sure.
Like, what are you dealing with? You wear these heavy gloves and you're sweating under this, this lab coat, and you got this lens over your that changes your perspective entirely on what you're going to deploy into.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, it changes the focus around user interface. It changes the focus around maximizing time.
Absolutely.
Right? It changes the focus around kind of what does the interaction between man and machine really look like?
Right.
And how critical is that particular interaction?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? How many times do you touch it a day? How many times do you want to touch it a day? How many times should you touch it a day?
Bingo.
Right? What are the limitations? How many times do you swear at the thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? All the things that end up being kind of important.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Right. So what does good look like within that space? Like we touched just for a second on focus groups. One of the big challenges I have with kind of marketing exercises for most companies is they've never been a customer, so they ask questions that would never get the desired result. Right. Like, do you prefer red or green for the button? I'm using a stupid example on purpose. Green? Okay, cool. Well, green was the right decision. Like, we did a survey, 77% of people said green, so we're going to focus all our efforts at changing the user interface to be green.
Yeah.
When the reality is, no one cared about the color to begin with. What I cared is it crashes 4 times a day.
Right.
But you never asked that question, so you didn't give me the opportunity to answer it.
So some of the best in that time working in IT and in another company, I worked with folks who were really into or good at industrial design and user experience, user interface design.
Right.
And they were really, really good at just observing. And I think that's golden. It's like very few words were spoken when they were in and just watching what was happening. So I think if you want to connect with, what is the like core, observe.
Yeah.
Questions are invariably, questions are tainted with where you want to take it. So you got to get good at observing and maybe asking somebody else to write the questions for you.
For sure.
Right. Because too many times I think it's about leading somebody to a conclusion that you've already
predisposed.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. If you predetermined the answer, don't ask the questions to begin with. Just say this is the answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like let's not play games. Let's not waste everybody's time.
Right.
Right. You've already decided.
Yeah,
so
you're
why
going to go ahead and test it in the real world, aren't you?
Right. So why waste my time asking me questions?
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the pieces of advice that I give to sales teams constantly is your job is to get your customer talking, not to get them listening.
Yeah. Yes.
They'll tell you everything you could possibly want to know to
Yes.
make the sale if you just get them talking.
Yes.
Right? So what's some advice that you'd give someone to get their customer talking?
Well, gosh, I think in the sense of like in the day-to-day, tell me why you do that. What does that mean to you? Or how does it feel when, or what are you nervous about right now?
Man, I feel like we should be doing this on a couch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me about your father.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's...
but why is such an important question, right? Such a valuable...
Yeah.
Like, what did you want when you opened this app?
Right, exactly.
Right? I get what you got out of it. I
Right.
get the buttons that you pressed. Those are easy to do. Does what you got out at all align with what you put in?
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Not questions like, would you like it if it did this? Okay.
Sure. But then we're backing into a decision I've already made.
That's right. Exactly.
Right. I know every time I've been asked that question, I know for certain what I'm being asked. What I'm being asked is, we have made this decision. Are you okay that we made this decision?
Exactly.
Not, we're preparing to make a bunch of decisions.
That's right. Yeah.
What would you really like this to do? What would you really, if you sat down and this was a blank screen, right? What would you want at the end of it?
It's that user experience person. It was like, why did you go there? What were you trying to do?
Right.
Right. I think that those, you can also have, that can, similar lines of questioning, I think, with respect to even a message or, can be very effective.
For sure.
But I think it's about wiping the slate, wiping your mind clean, and going in truly willing to accept whatever it is they're going to tell you.
Yeah. And putting your ego aside.
100%.
Right. Like you can't
100%.
be successful doing this if your ego is just in the way.
Oh.
Right.
Big time.
I was on stage. This is I'm a really good at improvisation. I'm a great dance partner, I tell everybody. So I don't generally go in with any kind of script. I may have 3 or 4 points, but that's it. So I'm sitting on stage, there's a Q&A going on, I'm part of the Q&A, and someone relays a marketing message that they had been taught at this sales kickoff, and I went, don't say that. And of course, like you could hear the puckering. And so this is the marketing, this is how we train everybody. And I went, you just said we do 1 and 5. But you do 2, 3, and 4, right? And they go, yeah. And I go, cool, why did you leave that out? I don't mean, why did you make your message 5 times as long? I mean, you said we do 1 and 5. So now I'm instantly thinking, first time I've heard it, I'm instantly thinking that all you do is the bookends. Now I have to go find someone that does 2, 3, and 4 because you've said I also need 2, 3, and 4.
Sure.
But if you say, we take you from 1 to 5, we take you on the whole journey, instantly, I now understand that, well, even if 1 and 5 are the most important, I'm covered all the way from end to end.
Yeah.
I can relax.
Right.
I can exhale. right?
Yes.
And it's so often we don't do that.
No.
Right? We do focus groups, not the same thing.
Yeah, I think security is complicated, networking is complicated, and that if you're so close to it, it's super easy to really complicate it for everybody else.
Sure.
And it's like what you mentioned about the show floor. If you walk around, you quickly realize that everybody's sort of saying the same thing. It's impossible to distinguish one from the other. What do they care about? What really makes them tick?
Yep.
I think those things matter a lot more. Why do you make the choices you make when you built that technology the way that you did?
Oh man,
God,
I tried so hard. I was at Hitachi for 3 years. I was the CTO, and I'm on the phone with the CEO. And Hitachi always makes the decision to go for performance. Nobody else does. Everybody else makes the decision to go for the UI first now in storage, right? Our stuff was hard to use. I say was because I'm not there anymore. Sure. Not that it's become easier to use.
I understand. Yeah.
Right, and so I'm like, so we made this decision. Yes. Why? What do you mean? I mean, why did we make this decision? Why did we buck the trend? And he goes, well, I go, look, I know the answer, but you're going to get up on stage and talk about it, and we bucked the trend, and no one else is doing this, and all you're going to say is we did it.
Yes.
The interesting part is why. The interesting part is why did we prioritize this over what the rest of the industry did?
Yeah.
You're not justifying an answer, you're explaining a behavior, right? And what you need to say is, as a Japanese company, there are two things we prioritize over everything else. Number one is reliability. Yeah. These are the decisions that we made to make sure what we ship is the most reliable. Yeah. And then performance, because not only are these workloads critical and have to always work, but they're the most intensive workloads in the world. These are the two things that we prioritize. Yeah. Yeah. We're sorry that we can't have a third, but nobody can have a third. So when someone else says they prioritize something else, you need to decide what is your priority.
Yeah, exactly, the trade-off.
Right?
Yeah.
And we just ignore it. And then the customer's left going, well, I really like the user interface of the other thing.
They should just understand that that's what we care about.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. No,
and then you leave it for salespeople to figure it out. You leave it for marketing people to figure it out.
That's right.
Because no one is that connected. And if you don't say the quiet things out loud, everyone gets to make up the quiet thing and then say it out loud. Yeah. You're never right.
Yeah, that's very true. It's it's easy to forget that, I think, the further you get into it.
Sure.
And you have to constantly bring it back to that center, that core. And what do you believe in? And I see it in my founders.
Sure.
In the decisions they've made that at times you say, well, boy, that seems like the hard way. And invariably they come back with, but it's the right way.
Sure.
It's what we believe in. And I admire that.
100%.
It's what keeps me there. It's inspirational, really. It's sort of a similar DNA to the person in the lab who I got into this work because I want to help people with their pain management or with X, Y, and Z. I'm in.
Right. Oh, you buy in, they'll buy. Right. We're humans.
Oh yeah, big time.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
You went to college?
I did.
Cool.
Yeah.
You have friends from that kind of time? You have friends you've had for 20 years?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? You get together with them sometimes, whatever that looks like. And when you do, you have a language that you speak, right?
Yes.
Right. You've added someone to that group?
Sure.
How long did it take them to figure out the language?
A long time.
Right?
Yeah.
Does it ever feel like that's marketing? Like marketing is, we all speak a language. Every one of our customers is a new friend to that friends group, and they don't understand any of the things we say. So bad marketing is just is never fixing that, and good marketing is making it feel like they've been part of that friends group for 15 years the first time they meet you.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. 100%. I love that analogy.
Well, I think we'll end there then.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Well, on that note,
that was great. Thank you very much.
thank you. This has been another episode of Discovering Disruptions in Tech. As always, like, subscribe, comment, share, reach out. If you hate it, just tell us. If you want to see something else, let me know. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.